All right, welcome back, guys. As we knew this day would come, Monday. What is it? The 6th? What's today's date? I don't
The
even know the date.
16th, my man, the 16th.
Illegal tampering period has arrived, and as we expected, the news is flying. So let's start off with the big one, the shocker of the day. The Cardinals trade running back David Johnson to the Houston Texans, and in return, they get a big fish. They get maybe a top 3 to 5 receiver in the NFL in Deandre Hopkins. James, what's your initial reaction?
Well, if you had to put a gun to my head and say who's one guy that's not going to be traded, he might be on that list for me. I think initial reaction, the Texans need a real GM. They're idiots.
You don't think Bill O'Brien can do both?
No, I
I don't think he can do one.
No, exactly. He's struggling to do one. Now you're asking him to do two. I don't get it. I don't know what the motives are, because it's not like you're just cutting salary. He's going to make more money than David Johnson, but you're still taking on a guy with way inflated salary.
Yeah.
I don't get it. My initial reactions are it's just stupid. I mean, Deshaun Watson cannot be happy. He cannot be excited about this. He officially lost free agency. Deshaun Watson did.
Okay.
And I don't think they're a playoff team at this point. I just don't. What about you?
So you're speaking of it from the Texans, and I agree from that point of view. So let's talk about – I want to talk a little bit about from the Arizona Cardinals side. And
you've been riding them since they got their quarterback last year.
You ain't lying. And to me, how happy is Kyler Murray got to be right now? I mean, they take a guy in David Johnson who, while a couple years ago was one of the fantasy studs in the NFL, but since then, I believe since he broke his wrist really a couple years ago, he's never seemed to be right since. And they were able to bring in Kenyon Drake from the Dolphins last year, who was a heck of a pickup for them. So really, they're getting rid of a guy that they don't use or don't need anymore, and bringing in a top 3 receiver. I mean, this is an awesome move. Now, let me just get a couple of the other details to the deal. The Cardinals also receive a 4th-round pick in this year's draft, while the Texans get a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft and a 4th in next year's draft. So, in total, the Cardinals are getting a 4th-round pick and DeAndre Hopkins, and the Texans are getting David Johnson, a 2nd this year and a 4th next year. So, the Texans do get that 2nd-round pick this year, which we know is valuable. But, man, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, so on one side you're going to have DeAndre Hopkins. On the other, you're going to have Larry Fitz, 2 Hall of Fame receivers now on one team. Now, granted, Larry Fitz is on the back 9 of his career, maybe 17th or 18th hole of his career, if we're talking golf terms here. But he's still a quality receiver who works just as hard as anyone in the league. So, man, that offense just got pretty scary.
And who's the other guy that they have? He's a shorter guy, Christian. He's from Texas A&M.
Christian Kirk, yeah. Absolutely, and he showed out this year. He had a couple really big games.
Yeah, so Kyler Murray has probably the best 2 days of his professional career. Yesterday, he shows off his Bruce Lee chain that he bought for $100,000, and today he gets another toy.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's like you said. What are the Texans thinking here? I mean,
I don't understand it.
They seemed pretty close. They seemed like, at least in my mind, they had to have thought that they were this far away from making that next step and being a Super Bowl contender. Well, now, to me, that drops them way down the pack.
Yeah, all they needed to me – well, not all they needed, but what they really needed was offensive line help.
Yeah.
And they're going to be competitive in every game, even more so than they were last year. But you give up your best weapon. To me, 9 times out of 10 in any trade, whoever ends up with the best player in the trade, no matter what the actual trade of assets is, usually wins.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is definitely a win for the Cardinals.
Wow.
It makes me happy because that's one less team. The Texans is one less team we have to worry about in the AFC competing for, playoff position. So,
well, let's talk about teams in the AFC, and this team regularly wins the offseason. So the Cleveland Browns just made Hooper. Is Aaron Hooper? Yeah, Aaron Hooper. Austin Hooper. That's what it is. Austin Hooper, the highest paid tight end in the NFL.
Yes, a quality player.
Yeah, sure. But Baker's still, to me, going to be running for his life. I still think they need offensive line help. And I don't know. I don't know how much sense this one made to me. They made a splash. They have their GM is what, 32?
Yeah, young guy, analytics guy, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, he's a Harvard grad, went to Bel Air, of course, which we know well. But you know what? I don't know. I mean, I give him a C at best. I mean, yeah, they got a good player, but I don't think is what they needed. They have a wealth of riches when it comes to offensive weapons, but if Baker's running for his life or he doesn't have holes to throw to because he's short, then what good is it to you? So that's just my take. What do you think?
Well, I think he showed the last few seasons in Atlanta that he's a heck of a red zone threat. He's certainly one of the best red zone threats in the league, and Matt Ryan often found him in big situations, third down as well as red zone. So I think it's a good pickup from a talent standpoint. He's a good player, and it looks to me like they're all in on Baker. They are surrounding him with even more talent. I mean, they already brought in Beckham last year, Landry. They got a great running back behind him. So, like you said, they still have to add to the offensive line. But I will say this. I've been hearing a lot of the draft pundits mention that this is a very deep draft when it comes to offensive linemen. So maybe they look at it as they can shore up those holes in the offensive line through the draft, and they wanted to provide as many weapons as possible. Now, they already had a pretty good tight end in David Njoku, but he's had injury issues. So he's had trouble staying on the field. So even if say he is healthy, now you just have two tight ends, which we've seen in Baltimore can be quite valuable to have multiple tight ends. So I think it's a good pickup from a talent standpoint, but I think, like you said, there's one problem they got to fix, and that's Baker Mayfield. And I think you do that more by protecting him and keeping those happy feet a little more settled than you do by adding another weapon that there's only one ball. So how are they going to get all these guys the ball? That's the question.
Right. No, absolutely. It's interesting to me because Baker has, in his first 7 starts, there were some guys that he was throwing the ball to that weren't considered, your number one guy or whatever the case may be. But there were guys he worked with in on the practice squad and on the second unit and things like that when he wasn't the starter. So he's shown the ability to create that rapport with any guy. But what happened that year is they between year 1 and year 2 is their offensive line got weaker. And like you said, I think that's the real difference. And you know what? I hate to say it, but Eric DeCosta keeps robbing people blind. And it's just what sets apart the Browns from the Ravens. I mean, it's a couple standard deviations of difference when you're talking about the front office.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like you said, in our last one, we gave up Vedvik and a 5th-round pick for Marcus Peters and Calais Campbell.
Unreal. And, don't forget Kenny Young.
Oh, and Kenny Young, excuse me.
No, you're right. It's absolutely unreal. When you see other moves around the league, these head scratchers, it makes you thankful that we have, in Baltimore, we have such a steady front office that always seems to make the right move. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward. It looks like right now it's just breaking that the Niners are nearing an agreement with for a 5-year deal with their star defensive lineman, Eric Armstead, who ended up with 10 sacks last season, including 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery. And he also had 2 sacks in the playoffs. So that's a big get for them, a guy that they thought they might not be able to afford. So if they can reach that 5-year deal, that vaunted 49ers pass rush will continue on for at least one more year, it looks like.
But it also does guarantee, based on the size of that deal, that
no Brady?
But also it does guarantee that eventually it's going to have to part ways. I'm assuming his deal is not going to be super team friendly.
Yeah, well, it can't. I mean, I'm sure the guy wants to get paid.
Right, exactly. So that's a tough one. It's a win and a loss. Like you said, you get it for guarantee one more year, but you know that later on down the road, some of those assets you're not going to be able to re-sign.
Yep, absolutely.
A couple of things, and then I want to ask you a question. Just a couple other notes. We've seen a lot of trades happening, I feel like, and that's been a trend in the NFL. But also some franchise tags, some guys that we talked about as potential finds for the Ravens. We talked about a potential reuniting of the Ravens and Rick Wagner, but he has been picked up by the Packers. They agree to terms. AJ Green, of course, we've been talking about since the offseason, has been tagged by the Bengals. The Titans decide not to use their tag on Conklin, their right tackle and decide to use the tag on Derrick Henry, which is interesting because I don't know where that leaves them with Conklin. Maybe they think they're close to a deal, but that's a guy that they need. Officially, he has taken, like you said, Sam Bradford's spot. Kirk Cousins becomes the best quarterback of all time at securing the bag. Based on his extension, it's $96 million over the next 3 years, and it is the way that he structured it is essentially guaranteed. I don't understand all the details of it as it kind of gets into the minutia of all the contract verbiage and things like that, but it makes him very hard to be offloaded if he starts playing terrible. Pretty incredible. One other note, too, is the Packers agreed to terms with Christian Kirksey, who's a guy that you said the Ravens would be potentially interested in. And I was sad to see that one go because I agreed with you. That would have been a good pickup. Blake Martinez still out there for middle linebacker. I haven't heard any movement on Schobert.
Yeah,
the longer they sit out there, Eric DaCosta is a shark, man. He circles and circles and circles. And when he strikes, he strikes.
Yeah, and he seems to be doing it all the right times. So, obviously there's still 13 free agents from the Ravens that are looking to either go elsewhere or come back. I have heard that the Ravens are looking at re-signing a couple of those guys. Anthony Levine being one of them, as we know, is one of the leaders on defense and special teams. I know he only comes in those sub packages, but still is one of our longest. He may be, other than Sam Cook, our longest tenured Raven now. With Marshall retiring. So he's certainly a leader in the locker room and on the practice field. So I know they're looking to bring him back. Also looking maybe to bring back Josh Bynes. So I wanted to get your quick thoughts on a couple of these guys. Josh Bynes, Pernell McPhee, and I think that's it for right now that I'm seeing. So how would you feel about them bringing Josh Bynes, Pernell McPhee, and Anthony Levine back?
I like them both. I like the Bynes thing as long as it's not a first option.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think he showed what he is and did well last year. I'm not going to knock him. I think he did a lot better than what a lot of people predicted he was going to do. He held down the fort and showed veteran leadership, but I think we need to upgrade overall. I like the McPhee thing. As long as he can stay healthy, he played well.
Yeah.
I mean, and he brought that intensity, that Raven-type mentality to the defensive line. So I like all those. I think, I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you have on Jimmy yet. Where we want to be. But the Ravens are not surprisingly to any of us that are Ravens fans, not surprisingly quiet right now.
Laying in the weeds, man. Hey, to be honest, this is the most active we've seen this early with the Calais Campbell move.
Yeah.
Right. Typically, I think Ozzy's a little bit more patient than Eric DaCosta is, so we might see more.
Something I think is interesting is that now the way that they did with Calais Campbell, think about it, they got that deal done essentially one day before free agency opened. And I think the reason we've seen these trades more is because Eric really wants those comp picks.
Yeah.
Because now it's not going to go against the comp pick, right, based on the free agency structure. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
yeah, I'm excited. I think that a couple names to keep an eye on as far as the Ravens go. I think I just have a feeling about Schobert. I could be totally wrong. I just have a feeling about him, though. I think he could be a good value pick.
Yeah.
And then Kelechi as far as offensive line. And your boy, Philip Dorsett. I haven't heard anything on yet.
No. And I think him or the other gentleman I liked was Geronimo Allison. So we'll have to see. But as we kind of expected, the news is going quick. So we can continue to see. I'm sure we'll continue to see more players go down, and we'll keep putting up videos. So that's all we have for now. But make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll be talking soon.